Well, it's 8:15. Does everybody feel ready?
Right, so I'm gonna get.
Okay, well, let's get started. I'd like to call the Watco Public Utility District Number 1 meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. Our general manager, I think, is not in the room at the present because he's maybe battling something, so we're just taking abundance of precaution. But he'll be able to talk to us via Zoom. And just wanted to mention that. So let's get started. We'll call the meeting to order and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, let's move on to the agenda. We have a full agenda. Are there any modifications or changes that you all would like to propose?
And you all received the updated agenda with the addition of the resolution
Yes.
that I emailed yesterday. Okay, that is what was sent to everybody. So,
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yeah, this is fine.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I will second. All those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye. I thought I'd do something different.
Switch it up. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda, which is the minutes of the regular meeting of February 25th. And approval of the claims from March 11th today. Any comments or?
None from me. I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Okay, now let's move on to public comment. So let's see, is anybody in the room? So like no public in the room. Can we check online? Attendees. I don't see any hands raised at the present. So, okay, let's recognize that there's a public comment at the end of the meeting as well. If anything springs comment, we'll be able to have it before the end of the meeting. And let's move on to then the general manager's report.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but I really don't want you guys to get what I've got. It's not a lot of fun. I've got a few things to talk about. You'll notice my update is a little longer than normal. And part of the reason is I can blend in a quick strategic planning update, and then my comments bleed into the BPA comments. So it all kind of fits together. So let me start out with a simple administrative thing. On Friday, we're going to have a meeting with Karina Hoyer. And what we haven't done is set the location yet. And that's because of me. I've been trying to figure out how to get all the electronics and everything else. So what I would like to do is set the meeting for this Friday, 1 to 4 at our normal staff headquarters here. And
Let's hold that down. Let's make sure, because I just got that information now.
I have not heard of it.
no, this is the first that I'm giving you right now.
Do you mind if we then make sure the commission's fine with that time frame? What time were you suggesting?
Absolutely. 1 to 4.
Like it's open here.
I'm good with that, Mace.
Now, I got to tell you, when I talked to Karina and we went over the items that she wants to cover, it's one of those things where it could be a 2-hour meeting. But what I told her was, my experience with this group, Eddie, excluding you, the last time we had a meeting with Karina, I think you were in the audience, but Todd Lagusty was a temporary commissioner, interim commissioner. And my experience has been that these end up being really good conversations and people want more time. So if you guys want to have a shorter meeting, we can. If you want to have a different day or a different location, we can reschedule. But anyway, that's what I'm proposing for now.
Chris, Friday is fine for me, but I'm not available until 2:30.
Should we put it back a week on?
It gets harder for me as it gets closer to April 5th.
Oh, okay.
So, if we could do, 2:30 to 5, or, something like just.
That's kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, does that work? You had said 1 to 4 time frame. It's going till there were 2:30 to 5. Yeah,
I mean,
we probably want more than 90 minutes, right?
Should I bring some chai, guys?
Yes.
Okay, I'm committing.
all right, I'll speak on Karina's behalf. I think that's okay.
Make it less, it'll make it easier to go to sleep at night.
That's right. And I prefer tea anyway.
Okay,
Okay, so we're looking 2:30 to 5 on Friday.
Yeah.
We'll be right there in the commission meeting room. And John, are you okay with that? I think, John, you were gonna zoom in, right?
Zoom in.
Yeah, okay. So it'll be a hybrid meeting, and it'll be a normal open public meeting with no decisions. And I believe you guys normally in the course of these things take public comments as they come.
so it'd be really great for the public's benefit to get the agenda out, but, and, or can we summarize right now what the agenda is going to be?
Yeah, so the agenda is going to be an open public meeting from 2:30 to 5 that's going to essentially be a team building meeting with Karina Hoyer.
I spoke to Karina last night on the phone, and we kind of talked a little bit about
Okay, great.
what would be, so roles and responsibilities. Take 2 is kind of what she was thinking,
Okay.
and it
Consistent
sounds
with
like,
her notes,
what's that?
consistent with the notes. that we
Yes,
got.
yeah, and she's got some fun exercises planned.
And she's asked me to kind of redo what I had done before.
Cool,
And so you all are aware that public notice will go out today
Okay,
after the meeting. And it will go to our regular group and be posted on our website per statute.
okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, commissioners. The second thing, when I was away in Washington, D.C., there was a lot of talk about tariffs and especially tariffs on energy coming out of Canada. So kind of, we're thinking about tariffs on American goods or on Canadian goods coming in, but there's also potentially tariffs on or surcharges on energy coming south. And in fact, at least in Ontario, I don't know about BC, that has come to be. So I have asked Brian to take a look at what that might do for our costs, especially later this summer and further out. And at this point, I'd like to call on Brian to chime in and have a little discussion on that with the commission. Brian?
thank you.
Brian, it might be easier for you just to sit over at my place there.
Yeah, cause I'll and all that. I'll break it down.
I can do that. It makes it easier.
We're not gonna get many more chances like this,
Nope, 3 weeks.
unless you come to your vote.
Unless she come to my booth. That's right. And then it's cocktail time.
Okay, well,
Anyway, Chris has asked me to talk about the potential impact of the tariffs on energy imports into the United States from Canada, and, really the impact on Bonneville costs, which then translate into rates and charges to us that we pass on to the customers. And the conversation is gonna be a little bit like the weather forecast, because there's a lot we still don't know about how these tariffs are gonna be applied yet. So my short answer on the impact is we don't know the actual impact yet. It's unlikely, in my opinion, that in the near term, and I mean in the next couple of years, that the tariffs are gonna have a significant impact on our costs. There'll be like a cost adder on top of all the other costs that make up Bonneville's cost of service. Long term, or the long answer is that Bonneville's costs are really, they come from a complex set of variables. So it's not just a tariff increase on Canadian imports, it's a lot of factors, and so you kind of have to sort through that. There will be an impact, but how significant, we don't know yet. Just to clarify on the 10% tariff, it's on energy coming in, and so for our purposes, it's natural gas, because natural gas, we've got a number of natural gas generators that purchase power. So it's natural gas, and the Northwest is highly dependent on Canadian gas when it comes to power generation, and also you think about all the other things that flow through, space heating, cooking, our customer industrial process, the refineries use a lot of natural gas. So that will impact them.
Who uses more, PSC or the refineries natural gas?
Oh, PSC by far. I mean, if you look at impact of natural gas tariffs, the IOUs, I mean, PSC, Avista over in Spokane, Idaho Power, they're gonna be heavily impacted by a tariff on gas because of their gas generators. Puget Sound Energy's got 4 gas plants right here in the county. And so their cost of their input is gonna be going up. So the other thing is not just natural gas, but it's direct electricity imports. And when you think about BC Hydro selling into the States, there will be a tariff on that electricity. The thing that fascinates me is I don't know how that's gonna play out, where you impose the tariff and how you track who's buying what. It would probably be a lot of after the fact accounting.
Doesn't it kill their ability to join an RTO? Or severely complicate their joining an RTO?
Not really. I mean, you're gonna see the tariff impact the markets in California, because Canadian power flows into California as well. So I don't think it will complicate it.
Brian?
Pardon?
Yeah, can I jump in on that?
Yeah.
So it won't have, Commissioner Deshmani, it won't have any impact on the RTO at all, because that is a transmission operation. And they're by law barred from considering price in operations. That's the whole Enron thing. Where it would impact would be if we organize a west-wide market, and I've got comments on that later on. And typically the answer is it depends on how the market's structured. So in MISO, for instance, they deal with this process where it's simply an adder. And so it's an adder on energy bid into the market. So it may be that the units that are north of the border don't dispatch because they're too expensive. So they just don't sell into the market. Anyway, all that aside, we don't have an organized market here. So to the extent that there are already contracts in place and they allow for these cost adders to be passed through, they would be passed through. Failing that, there'd have to be bilateral negotiations on the contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Chris is exactly right. Impacts on Bonneville, of course, Bonneville in terms of Canadian energy, they have bilateral contracts, so there may be a deal there that would be impacted. They've got their market purchases, and they participate in the California EIM, the Energy Imbalance Market. So the tariffs would flow through in some manner in all of those transactions. If you look at Bonneville in calendar year 2023, about 10% of their power supply portfolio that we buy had 2 components. It had non-specified resources, which basically they're doing system purchases. They don't know what type of generator generating the power. They're buying off some entity's system, or they're a market purchase. So it's real time, it's short-term purchases. They don't know what the origin is, but about 10% of their power comes from EIM purchases and market. So if you assumed all of that was, either Canadian electricity coming directly in or gas-fired resource from an American source, and assume that was all tariffed, about 10% of their power supply would be impacted, so. But that depends on the year. In this particular year, they were buying, it was 10%. If they have a real good hydro year, it's less. So the previous year, they were only into the market EIM for about 3% of their power needs. So that's a variable that year to year changes dramatically. Bonneville right now, as you've been reading, is forecast, we're in a low water year, about 85% of normal. Where you'll see some of this play out is the net revenues for Bonneville. Low water years, they get less revenue. They have less surplus power to sell. So you could see an impact on this. A greater impact of the tariff would be if Bonneville surcharges to make up for reserves. They have reserve levels they have to maintain. If they go below those reserve levels, then they can surcharge the customers. So if anything drives up their costs, like if the market costs when they're in there purchasing is high and the tariff adds on top of that, then you might see us get surcharged. Give you a couple of more examples is that events. Here again, I think a bigger impact on us are when there are power system events. You look at the heat wave, California, market price goes through the roof. Bonneville's short because they had a low hydro year. Our costs for those hours or that time they're purchasing are dramatically increased, 250%, 300%, whatever it happens to be. That far exceeds the tariff. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had the disruption in Canadian gas supply. They had that gas explosion shut down part of the pipeline system in Canada. That was a huge impact for buyers of gas on this side of the border because the price of gas went through the roof. So I think those kind of factors, events, non-planned events, are bigger than the impact of the tariff. As far as things to look at for us, how this might play out. Right now, we're in a rate case. And Bonneville, as part of that rate case, forecast market power prices going forward and before they set the rates. Well, because they're still in the rate process, they could actually adjust their models to take in the high gas cost risk or look at the risk of a tariff on electricity. And so we could see higher rates coming out of the rate case than would have happened. So that's the most immediate thing we might see, an adjustment to Bonneville's models for forecasting costs.
And for the last several years, we've been a net buyer from Canada, right, the region? Not a supplier.
Yeah, the United States we're a net purchaser. We do sell some into Canada, but net, yeah, we purchase more than we sell.
And is Bonneville set up to, I assume they will be, they'll have to get set up to pay because they're countervailing tariffs, they'll have to pay too?
Depends, I don't know how that accounting is gonna take place. One way to do it is.
I would say that's a reasonable surmise. We don't know yet. But that would be one administrative way to handle it.
Commissioner, I'd like to leave it open up for the three of us to make some comments because we, on a policy level, it matters to us, these kinds of things. What do y'all think about this?
My only comment is everything sucks, but at least we have cheap savings and groceries, right? At least we're just driving down the price of groceries, so. I don't know, most of us know this already. I think that we've been probably reading everything that we've come across and watching the news, right? This isn't a shock.
No, it's not sure.
You're just reiterating stuff that we kind of know.
Yeah, where it'll play out in our rates is coming up is the load following rate that we buy full requirements from Bonneville and then they follow our load. That is a market based, the load following piece. Our main rate is basically cost of service, but the load following isn't. The other place would be in tier 2 pricing.
Tier two
That's
prices.
got much more market exposure than tier one does. And the third thing would be, you'll see it on the transmission side because the ancillary services, the support services for transmission, those are basically all market-based. So,
Commissioner Yuri?
What's the timeline for the rate case adjustment?
well, the rate case is in progress now. Bonneville in December of last year published their, what's called the preliminary proposal, their preliminary rates. And that showed roughly a 3% increase in tier one. Tier two jumped dramatically. So if tier one ends up being around $39, tier two for the first year was about 70. So, but the final rates come out in the May, June timeframe. Then there'll be a 90-day comment period by the public, and then the administrator of Bonneville will publish the ROD, the record of decision. So we've got a ways to go yet, but it's getting close.
I guess where I'm at is like, where do we go from here? Like, this is a policy decision, unlike other energy crisis that we're facing that is like reliant on climate. And, you know, this is something that somebody decided that like, hey, we're gonna engage in a trade war. So what do we, you know, what do we as a commission is just, you know, a small little walk on PUD, but part of bigger, you know, policy makers? What do we do to really encourage change to the policy that's,
Yeah, I think it's appropriate conversation too, but, I'm just still digesting
are you?
the implications.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad.
And that's what
No, but I'm
Yeah.
glad you bring that
Yeah.
up because, and I think we should, you know, to our team, be looking for input on what can we do to be more resilient and robust, with respect to these changes. And I think we're all just digesting all the changes. Takes a little bit of time to figure out what the appropriate response is, but I very much
Yeah.
agree with you.
I mean, there's not really much we can do as far as the rates, right? There, like, it just is what it is.
Well, let's just
But-
throw something out. Well, Brian was talking about tier two pressure, and we know we have, we're gonna dip into tier two.
Yeah.
And we've always had this, do we go get our own power? Or do we leave ourselves open to tier two? And that depends on what Bonneville's analysis produces. So I think our choices of, Bonneville versus other supplier will be affected by these, tariffs or potentially. So
You're thinking that we can find another supplier for energy?
a domestic supplier to fill in some of the, power supply our demand needs, potentially. I mean, we of course, we've got this longstanding conversation with, what's the name of that solar project that we got started with in 2020?
No, the two chief, the solar project,
Ruby Flat, is that what we call
Ruby
it?
Flats.
Ruby Flats, yeah, Tucci Energy. So, you know, we're still involved in that, right? We're still on the table there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Is it potentially gonna look sweeter as a result of this?
sweeter, I don't think so. I mean, that
Okay.
project, it's even some question whether to go forward.
Okay, yeah,
It's interesting, I think, that if you look at the reaction to the tariff announcement, there were articles in the paper by the IUUs almost immediately, you know, that's gonna have a big impact. Well, the publics haven't said much because they're trying to digest. It doesn't have the direct impact on the public community as it does with the IUUs. So,
It will in the next couple of months though, right? When they start getting their energy bills, especially in Ontario, right? Or the people that live in Michigan, people that live right across the
Mhm.
border, they'll be getting, I mean, pretty quick response.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's why I like, you know, I'm digesting the information too, but, it seems like this administration's been waffling a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of
on-
waffling going on.
They're like, oh, well, actually, we're gonna pull that back, so,
Mhm.
but
Well-
that's why, you know, I'm wondering about where we put the pressure. Yeah,
Well, I just want to observe that, you know, number one, you are correct. This is a policy issue, and that's why I'm not chiming in. I will say that what's been effective, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this, but what's been effective is our voice at WAPUTA. which is you guys. And then WPUDA works with PPC, and so you have a bullhorn shouting into a bullhorn. And it really has magnified the voices of the small utilities. And it's been pretty darn effective, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So, and I do want to talk about that because that was some of the surprise that I had in Washington, D.C. and then last week at PPC. So, um, but that my recommendation would be yes, you guys should get involved. You should probably do it at the WPUDA level. And I think Eddie, you're our electric representative, is that right?
Correct?
Yeah, so I think that Eddie'd be the appropriate spokesperson at the WPUDA meetings. But you know what you would want him to talk about is the will of the commission, and that comes from all three of you, not Eddie.
I think it's appropriate for us to say as a commission, I'm gonna throw this out here for discussion, is that, we're not in favor of tariffs. Is that a comfortable statement that we're, for us to be able to make?
Yeah, that's a pretty simple one. It
Okay.
will harm our community.
Yeah.
I would agree, certainly not these tariffs.
Yeah,
I would, okay, there's a lot of, there's so many dimensions to this, and as far as what a course of response might be, and this is, we're in for maybe perhaps years of uncertainty.
Mhm.
And so I'd like to just further, just maybe identify some of these, unknown possibilities that, to consider. Because you brought up the retaliatory surcharge on power that's been put in place in Ontario, a possibility of that here. Surcharges on gas transmission, like is there any precedent for that? What do we know as far as how that might hit us?
I don't know if there's a precedent for it or not. We don't know how it will hit us in terms of how it flows through and ends up in, power costs.
Yeah, because I would say like, it's not just a matter of like, what this does is it raises some deeper questions about the vulnerability of, us in Northwest Washington here, given our particular dependence on foreign sources of oil and gas to meet our basic day-to-day needs. So, it's not only so there's the 9 gas-fired thermal power plants that make up a huge portion of PSE's portfolio, not ours. Direct gas transmission service, there were oil refineries, about, I think, 30% of the feedstock oil coming in to the refineries from Canada, and it's 100%. People, I think, they often seem to just cast aside the fact that 100% of our natural gas supply is from the Montney Shale in British Columbia. There's other parts of Washington State may be able to get some through the pipe from Colorado Rockies. There's too much competition for that. They're just in the pipeline network. We are wholly dependent on them. And so, whatever federal policy aside, we are not in we have no price leverage or bargaining position, which is further being undercut when it comes to what Canada chooses to charge. Because, they've nationalized their pipeline transmission system. They've been, for many years, serving oil and gas to us at a loss. As in, it costs them more than what they sell to us. There are more complex arrangements in place as far as how we've been able to secure that, and that's being upended. So, I would say but even independent of, say, these tariffs, this just further gives them an excuse to retaliate, but they own the pipelines. They own the pipelines in the United States that serve the oil refineries. It's owned by the Canadian federal government. There are charges those are placed directly on the refineries. With gas transmission, it's in the Sumas hub, it changes over into the US pipeline system. We don't know the levels of price shock that it could occur here. And, as you were raising, just given the overall complexity of that 10% of BPA that's coming through the energy imbalance market, even though thankfully we don't serve gas as a service, we don't directly market any kind of gas-fired power, right? Except in that, that unknown portion of BPA, right?
Mhm.
I would just say my point is that this goes deeper than tariffs and all together in we reinforce it, I think, what some of our longer term strategies are, which is the need to have energy independence and autonomy that is not dependent on, something coming across the border where, as you're saying, it's also just vulnerable to disruption where, just because of just failures of systems, a 1,000 miles, that could happen anywhere along 1,000 miles of pipeline in a cold climate. We're just super vulnerable here. So, this all goes more to like what we're exploring with a geothermal power plant that could meet all of the energy needs for Whatcom County and beyond. But when it comes to this federal policy level, I'm sure that it's been hammered across the board for, don't do this, right? And it's still happening. So yeah, Chris, I guess there's a lot of things I'd like to explore as far as our course of action as a policy response. And also maybe what was sort of incumbent on us as, our serving the public to help people understand what's behind these price shocks that they're going to experience. And I'm curious though to hear more from Chris as far as what the conversations were like with members of Congress and folks that you met with.
Yeah,
So
there's other things you want to cover. So just to wrap up what Brian's report, thank you very much. As that was helpful in our understanding. And then also, however we decide to investigate this, I'd like to know if there's any need to explore how tariffs and current federal policy will impact the Columbia River Treaty negotiation. I mean, it's negotiated, but revision or whatever further addendum. So it's just a curiosity. So
Yeah, that was part of one of the discussions with Senator Cantwell. And her opinion was it was going to be, I'm jumping way ahead now, but her opinion was that it was going to be at least a year before those negotiations started again. And that's just normal with the changeover administration. It took a year with the Biden administration to get reengaged. So she expects with Department of Interior and Department of State, the two main cabinet departments that are involved in this, that it's just going to take them a year to get reengaged. And then at the end of that, she was kind of like, well, it's making sausage. So, there may be a whole bunch of different things we want to see come out of it, and some may happen and some may not. And we're not really sure how it gets to the end, but it'll get to the end. That I'm really loosely paraphrasing her, and I'm going to apologize to the senator directly if anybody there thinks I mischaracterized it. But that was her read on the entire Columbia River system. Oh, it was kind of interesting, and she's apparently involved in it. I don't know if directly involved in the negotiations, but she's kept informed. So one thing I do want to point out, it sounds like just at a policy level that that you guys could say with certainty that you think it would be far better for us to be energy independent, both at the local and national level than we are today. That sounds like that sounds really broad and mom and apple pie, but it's also true. So that's
yeah, just speaking for myself, I mean, you want to have as much local resilience, and part of local resilience is good relationships with your neighbors. So complete independence is not ideal either, in my opinion. It's really a level of independence that is appropriate given your relationship with your neighbors. So, that's my perspective, and the shared goals with your neighbors too. So anyway, that's my opinion. Well, but we definitely, I mean, specifically where this is showing up is our support of the geothermal project. Obviously, that's a beneficial thing. It does create independence, but that's not the only reason I support it. In a cross-border having a single supplier is not, for thermal needs, is not ideal. Definitely want to increase the diversity of that, but whether you want to completely substitute for Canadian natural gas, I wouldn't think that'd be a good solution either. So,
well, if we had a replay of last summer, I would expect these tariffs to equate to a 1% move in the market. So 10% of 10%. But Brian's point was that, any exogenous event that happens, which gets back um, to the other point, any exogenous event is going to be much larger in impact. And that goes back to local resilience. So and Commissioner Deshmani, to your point, much like Commissioner Yuri's, I would say that, you guys are leaning towards an optimal level of local independence and national independence. And that we're probably not there right now.
No.
Okay. Wow, much more to follow. This is not an easy subject, and I don't think there's anything you could say it's a right answer.
You got other things to cover.
I do. So, real quick, on February 23rd, I had an hour-long interview on KGMI radio, and there's a podcast available. And we're going to go ahead and link that to the website at some point. I listened to it yesterday, and because it had been, a couple, 3 weeks since it was recorded, and I'd forgotten what I said, which is a good thing. So I listened to it kind of fresh, and I think I did okay. I didn't swear once. Kind of hit all of our high points, and actually sounded conversational the whole way through. So my hat's off to Lance Calloway. He was a really good interviewer. That helped a heck of a lot. So now I want to move on to the APPA legislative rally. And there's two parts to it I want to talk about. First part is where I got a huge set of surprises. And then the second part really didn't. The second part is the BPA part. The first part was on the suppliers. So there was a whole series of meetings hosted by APPA, not hosted by WPUDA, where they brought in people from Hubbell, which is a huge electrical supplier. They make all kinds of parts and pieces for electrical equipment. They make hot sticks. They make switches. They do all kinds of stuff. Wesco, which is the former Westinghouse Electric Supply Company, used to be part of Westinghouse. Now they're independent and they sell primarily Westinghouse, but they also are vendors for everything else. And Hitachi, those were the big three that were on this one panel. And one of the things that was really interesting, the fellow from Wesco, and I know them from 40 years ago when they were Westinghouse. He made an observation that 2/3 of their SKUs are for a single company, a single outfit. And what he was getting at was kind of the lack of industry standardization, that, a dead end shoe is not a dead end shoe. And by golly, it ought to be. But it's not. And every single utility will specify a slightly different dead end shoe. And that ends up being a problem. And that kind of part diversification doesn't help supply chain issues. So that was one thing that was a bit of an aha to me, but that wasn't kind of the big one. The big one dealt with what's happening in the market with regards to the hyperscalers. Now, these are the folks that are building the big data centers. And it turns out there's 6 of them, and they listed them off, and I didn't catch all the names. Microsoft and Amazon were 2 of them. I think Sabi is a third. Those are 3 relatively local ones. These are doing dozens of data centers each, and they're looking at 200 to 300 substations for each of the hyperscalers. And so when you think about that, you think about going from 500, 765, 230 kV down to a useful voltage, whether it's, 34 kV or 13.8 or 12.470, whatever the useful voltage is for these data centers. That transformer and all the switch gear that's associated with it comes from the same supply chain that the utilities have always drawn from. And these guys are smart. They spec it. They find out what the basic design is for a 500 kV breaker. And they say, the most common one in the industry, and they say, we'll take that. And so they've gone ahead and done that. And what the suppliers are seeing is a sudden increase in demand, but you can't scale up the supply. You got to build a new factory to get more supply. So demand's gone up and supply has not. And these hyperscalers are not overseen by a utility commission or anything else. they're looking at it, and if it costs them, $3 million to get, so a 500 kV breaker is about $500,000 in the utility world. These guys are willing to pay $3 million for one of these breakers because it fits the economics of their system. So what we're seeing is a couple of things. One is massive price shocks in the supply chain for utilities, not caused by utilities. And the second thing is at $3 million, the suppliers are saying, okay, you're first in line. So delays, like right now, a 500 kV breaker, we were experiencing 2 to 3 year delays in getting those. When I was in the business buying those things, it was about a 9 month lead time. And now we're looking at 2 to 3 years. They're seeing those balloon out to 5+ years. And on the power transformers, even worse. So a 765 or a 500 kV to a useful voltage, you're looking at moving out up to 7 or 8 years. And this is remarkable. Even on the 230 breakers, they're seeing those go out to 3 years. And that's truly a bread and butter commodity in the utility business. The other problem that's happened is that all these substations end up being dropped in local transmission queues. And so you're seeing the transmission queues blow up. So it's not just like Ruby Flats. We can't get a study out of Bonneville. Why is that? Well, because, the same time you've got a few power supply options being dropped into these interconnection studies, you've got hundreds of data center loads being dropped in. And that's creating some real problems. One of the approaches that the hyperscalers are now taking is they're looking at co-locating. So they want to locate the source at the data center and actually build new power plants or build the data centers around existing, preferably nuclear power plants. And so that, when you look at that, FERC is struggling with that. If a power plant is built inside of a data center and no power leaves the data center and the data center is not interconnected, FERC essentially has no say. And so what happens is you end up with a utility, a point utility essentially, that's drawing from all the resources all the other utilities have with no FERC oversight. And that's appropriate because they're not interconnected to anything else. But it creates that huge problem. The flip side is when these data centers build adjacent to power plants and they want something tossed over the fence, then FERC says, aha, well, that power plant's interconnected to the system, you're interconnecting to the power plant, therefore you're interconnecting. And right now that's a legal issue before FERC. And they've heard 2 of these cases, rejected both of them. What the courts are going to say at the end of that, I don't know. But I hadn't thought through all of the implications on these hyperscalers and what the data centers are doing to our utility supply system. This is relevant to us if we end up taking a position off of the 230 kV bus at the Intalco sub and beginning to run high voltage into Cherry Point, which is one path for development of Cherry Point. So, just a point for you guys to think about. If we end up doing anything like that, we're probably going to be looking at lead times that are significantly longer than anything else than what we've experienced in the past. Last but not least, it turns out that the energy efficiency guidelines for large transformers that were put in place during the Biden administration require a certain oriented grain structure of the laminate stacks in the cores. And it turns out there's only one company that makes that in America, and they make a tiny, less than 1% fraction of demand in America. So basically all of the transformer cores are imported. And fortunately, they're imported from people who today are our friends, like South Korea. But that can change. So we'll have to see how. Well, anyway, let's say there were a lot of really colorful side conversations in the break rooms after these presentations.
Not with the commissioners.
What's
No
that?
meeting. No meetings with the commissioners.
No. This was all GMs spouting off to each other. It was highly entertaining though. But a lot of us hadn't really thought through all of those impacts. So, Hitachi noticed. They observed that virtually all of our aluminum and copper that's brought in that's used in the United States electrical system is imported, which is true. So again, that is something that's out there. Now, the second topic of conversation was the power management agencies, the PMAs, of which Bonneville is one and TVA is one, but there are seven of them. There's WAPA and the Southwest Electric Power Pool or something. That's the one that starts over in West Texas and extends out. And there's a bunch of them. And the conversation among the people at APPA was, gosh, the more that the government intervenes in these things without understanding what's happening, the worse it gets. And Bonneville was the one that was cited as the example. And like, oh my God, people don't realize that it's not funded by taxpayers. This is money that comes from their customers. We pay for Bonneville. And every year Bonneville actually writes the federal government a check and makes a net payment to them. So folks didn't get that. So cutting people out of Bonneville doesn't save you a dime. What it does is impairs our ability to deliver power at cost-effective, reliable levels. And so that was the conversation that we all had kind of internally. And that was one of WPUDA's main talking points when we went to visit our elected officials. I was there for 4 visits. Congressman Larson, Congressman Del Bene, Senator Cantwell, and Senator Murray. Got to all 4 of those. And the very first thing each one of the 4 of them said was exactly that. We understand what's going on with Bonneville. We don't like it. And then they've intervened directly with the Secretary of Energy and Secretary of Interior for various things around that, Corps of Engineers, things like that. And they were perplexed. So their problem was they weren't even sure who to talk to in many cases. And the undersecretaries haven't been appointed yet. They have to be appointed and confirmed, some of them. And so there isn't anybody to talk to unless you want to talk to the secretary. And they were having trouble getting through, although it sounded to me like Senator Cantwell actually talked to the energy secretary, who kind of got it. So the 4 of them, if I can summarize it, basically said they were with us on the Bonneville issue 100%. They were pushing very hard on the executive branch. And I'm happy to bring that back. And they didn't believe that there was going to be any good resolution if layoffs and downsizing continued. So there was that. Congresswoman Del Bene also talked a lot about water infrastructure. So I think she's not our congresswoman, but she's very much interested in earmarks. I forget what they call those now, but earmarks for water infrastructure approval. And again, all 4 of them understood the LIHEAP, LIWAP issue, and that's the low income, that there isn't any low income for water, but there is for electric. And they see that as unfair. That people who can't afford electricity also can't afford their water bill. And if you're going to help one, you should help both. So that was really, really nice to see. So now, before I take comments on that, let me fast forward. The next week was a PPC meeting, and I think Commissioner Deshmani, you were on the call. I don't know how busy you were at the time, but this was a bombshell meeting. And so let me start off with the Administrator Harrison was at the meeting, and the first thing that he started off with saying before they got into the Markets Plus discussion was that they had received permission to rehire all of their probationary employees. So that was good. And they were being exempted from the reduction in force that was being pushed down on all the other federal departments. So it sounded to me like at some point a conversation happened with just adults in the room, and kind of a recognition that, aha, this is really different. We need to treat it differently. And it happened. So I think, that megaphone on megaphone effect that we had with WPUDA and PPC worked. And just flat out, it seems to have worked. So I heaved a huge sigh of relief. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a hiring freeze. I think there is a hiring freeze, even on Bonneville, which is, in my opinion, really unfortunate. Right now, they need to be building skills, especially around transmission queues, getting those transmission engineers, making sure they've got dispatchers that are deep enough so that when these folks retire, because they will,
Yeah,
that
we
there's
already had a
somebody.
problem. We
What's
already had a
that?
problem. We already had a hole we needed to fill.
Yep, exactly. So bottom line was I was very, very heartened by both the response of our federal delegation and then the results with Bonneville. It actually, my comment to Liz when we were in Washington, D.C. after Senator Murray's meeting was this isn't happening fast enough. Whatever's going on here, it's not working fast enough, and we're going to have damage done that's going to take decades to undo. Behind the scenes, it was happening fast enough, at least to curtail the damage. So that to me was really, really good news. And my thanks to WAPUDA, to PPC, and to APPA, because those folks they've been doing yeoman's work there, and it's invisible to all of us. And anyway, it worked. So that was some great news. And then the second bombshell that came out was the PPC meeting was used to make the announcement that Bonneville had a preliminary record of decision going with Markets Plus. And that is the market structure that is being put forth by the Southwest Power Pool, SPP. So that runs counter to what the IOUs wanted. I can only speculate as to why the IOUs preferred the CAISO market. I will tell you that Senator Cantwell was blunt, and she said there's no way we want to be dependent on the CAISO market, and that Bonneville should go with Markets Plus. That was a bit of a surprise, the comment. I think it was her. It might have been Senator Murray. But there were a number of folks who had comments about Bonneville that were along those lines, and it appears, and when you read the record of decision, which I can forward to you guys, I downloaded it. It's 90 some pages. But the bottom line is that BPA laid out some really good rationale on why they want to go with Markets Plus and why, in their opinion, it is vastly superior to the CAISO offering. So at that point, I'm going to stop and take questions.
Let me add to that because I also attended PPC. And I just want to say that Chris has been talking for a while here. I just want to do first a process check on our meeting. We have an estimated adjourn at 10:20. We also have some flexibility with the old business. So I'd like to ask as a first step is that we constrain our old business to be briefer, maybe more like 10 minutes.
Yeah, that would be great.
That gets our minutes back.
Yeah, I do have to be out of here by 10:20.
Okay, so I think we bought it back by constraining old business. Is that okay with you, Chris and Andrew? Okay, now let's get back to this subject because this is your trip, right? It was a very important trip. Chris, I can't imagine you could have had a better timed trip to DC to be part of a all points effort, right? And the public park community to successfully turn around some policy initiatives that directly impacted public power. Now, I wish everybody else who's suffering from this could have the same kind of team that we do on this particular set of issues. But certainly this is a big victory for the public power community on many Markets Pluses, the tariffs related, the hirings also. These are all three areas of real teamwork. And I'm grateful for that. But I'd like to add one other observation on the subject of Markets Plus. And what that is that if California certainly did its best to make us feel like we made the right decision. And both in the conversations on Wednesday, Chris, as well as what was discussed, a little bit of that was discussed the next day at the morning meeting, 8 to 12 meeting on Thursday of PPC, in which California is proposing some modifications that might be beneficial, but also some that would be more punitive to the public park community as it relates to transfers of power from other regions into the Northwest. That actually would penalize us for the cost of shipping power across states. So I just, Chris, if you could elaborate further more on that, I'd be happy to hear that. But it just, for me, cemented further that boy, did we make the right choice here, so.
Oh, yeah. So, the one for me that was the aha moment where it kind of exposed, I'm not going to say exposed a lie, but showed the real flaw with the Cal ISO one was on congestion rent payments.
That's what,
So,
yeah.
yeah, the issue there is that today when you have congestion, it's at the point of congestion that the money resides, and the thinking is that that allows the transmission owner of the congestion point to make investments and fix the congestion, to open up the floodgates, if you will. The change that California proposed was that all the congestion rent went to the load. In other words, the people who are paying the bills get the money back. And that, I mean, I can see both sides of that. I would rather make the investment and fix the problem so that in the future you don't have these issues. But if you're not going to do that, at least pay the people who, refund the money to the folks who incurred the cost. But then we found out that 90% of all the congestion points are inside California. So all the congestion rent, so like if you're wheeling power as we did last winter from Arizona through California up here, all the congestion points are in California, and that's why California got $110 million for, a day's worth of transmission power. And what they were proposing in their phase 2 legislative solution was to actually codify that in California state law, and that would be what ran CAISO. So, that was for me, the aha moment where you're looking for the smoking gun. What is it that's really, really wrong here with either proposal? And I couldn't see any with Markets Plus. It's just the standard, what you see in MISO or PJM or any of those. And with the Cal ISO, it was like, aha, here's how the playing field truly is not level. And again, that's pointed out in Bonneville's record of decision, or their preliminary record of decision. It's remarkable.
If California cared at all about our decision, Markets Plus versus EDAM, you think they would avoid something with this kind of optics? In the state legislature, while we're in the middle of our decision. And in addition, you think they would be doing things that wouldn't expose the obvious things that we've already figured out, which is that they're not oriented to the Northwest power needs, but they just cemented the point in this most recent legislative action. I want to bring up one other thing. Yes, Bonneville is being protected, but there's a lot of other agencies that are relevant to our functioning as an organization and as a public park communities for functioning. It's not just BPA. There's relevant things with the Bureau of Equalization. There's relevant functions at Department of Fish and Wildlife, which are like mission critical functions for the delivery of public power. And they're not faring as well as far as fighting the battle to maintain staffing for mission critical functions, because they can't make the same argument that we can with BPA, which is BPA is completely self-funded. Or it's a more nuanced explanation of why the operation, the staff at Bureau of Equalization and other agencies is mission critical.
Hey,
But
I want to go back to the Cal ISO thing. So, because I'm wondering if maybe I'm not understanding something. So we know that Cal ISO was created to care for the state of California, right?
yeah,
So why are we surprised that that's what they would want to do?
We're
Like,
not.
yeah.
We're not. That's why I was looking for the smoking gun. That's why. Having worked for
Okay.
them for 25 years, it's like, they're chartered. All of their elected officials are elected to take care of California, not anybody else. And they're doing that. And it's not a surprise, but it was fairly well concealed.
Yeah, okay. I mean, because when we talked about this, I don't know, when we first, 8 months ago, that was my inclination, was like,
sure.
this was created for the care of the state of California. Why would this even be a consideration?
But the
for us?
governor's memo was confusing, and there was one strong argument that did actually get through to me in favor of Cal ISO, but I don't want to get into that now. But yeah, I agree with that point. But I'd like to return to the point of Bureau of Equalization, if I might. I'd like us to consider at WPUDA and in other forums, what can we do to support other mission critical functions in federal agencies that relate to us and uncover those. Now, obviously, the big one of Bonneville. And we're obviously prevailing and making a dent on that. But I'd like us to consider what other areas and federal functions are essential to the delivery of public power. And it relates to our water supply as well. So I'd like to think about that because there's gonna be federal attenuation, no matter what. And we should try our best to fight for the positions that directly impact our operation as a utility and our colleagues. So I'd like staff to consider that and think those things through, the water team, the electric and.
Yeah,
And,
the biggest one that you haven't mentioned, the biggest one you haven't mentioned, Commissioner, is the Corps of Engineers.
So, thank you, yeah.
Yeah, they're probably as mission critical as Bonneville and more so than any other federal department. And then on stuff that we're interested in, geothermal, you've got BLM. And if they can't process a permit because they don't have anybody to look at it, there we go. Department of Interior, we're gonna want them to work with us on the adjudication. I mean, it's just kind of anything that you want the federal government to get involved with right now is hamstrung.
Yes.
Yes, well, and then, I mean, at the degree that we're gonna be dealing with this all year, and probably for more than all year. So let's just recognize that, okay,
Yeah.
anything else?
Well, some good news. I think we covered the Bonneville section as well as the general manager's report. So I think that gets us right about on schedule.
That's good to hear.
I have nothing further on the GM unless you guys got questions for me.
No, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the, you saying we've covered the Bonneville power report?
I think so. That was my intent because it was so tightly tied with all the stuff that's happened the last 2 weeks.
Okay, well, good.
And so you made that report in lieu of us meeting last Friday, which we had decided as a commission to do. That's correct, right? So I guess I want to throw that out there because it was in the minutes and I had talked to Joseph about it, that at our last Tuesday meeting, we had made a decision in the meeting minutes that we would meet on Friday to discuss BPA. And some of the issues around that. We were talking about perhaps a resolution. And then it just, like, that meeting I called on Wednesday and the meeting was canceled. And Eddie, I think that you had also had contacted the office because you were like, hey, what's happening with the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was our opportunity. This Bonneville Power Administration report was our opportunity to speak to the things that we wanted to speak to on Friday. So if there's anything else that you wanted to do on Friday, this is where it's at.
Oh, well.
Well, let me just say something about that, is that, I didn't understand that's what this agenda item was, as far as the last Friday's meeting, we had agreed to it, I knew Chris was gone. The meeting didn't get called, even though the commission agreed to the meeting. And so that was a conversation that I wanted to bring up today in my commissioner report. But I didn't interpret that this agenda item, number 6, was the response to the,
Did I get that right, Joseph and Chris?
Yes, and that was not Joseph's call, that was mine. When I said, what do they want to have the meeting for? And Joseph told me, I said, then let's go ahead and cancel that because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday. And I figured the 48-hour business hour delay was not really relevant. My apologies. I didn't mean to usurp your authority. I see now that was the net effect. I do apologize for that.
Oh, I worry less about that and just that we know what that little Bonneville Power Administration discussion was about. This is in lieu of the Friday meeting.
And per Chris and I's discussion, as I emailed and said to you, I mean, the thing is he was coming back with DC with all of this new information that he had told me, it's going to be valuable to this discussion anyway. So that is why he had asked me to put that 30-minute section in there so that a discussion could be had with all the information on the table.
if I'm correct, sir.
Yes.
Well, my understanding of, when we, scheduled the meeting was, would include, talking about federal policy issues and BPA. And would include a report back on, your experience in DC, general manager, but we were also, I think we're pretty clear that we wanted to have some a little bit more open-ended time to discuss state legislative matters as well.
Yes,
Because the House of Origin bill cutoff is on Wednesday the 12th, and then we have we have a WAPUDA policy meetings next
right.
week.
That's what was driven with more for me, state level policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I did, I think there was this is, illustrated to me that I need to make sure to double check, but my expectation is that when we decide to schedule a meeting, and we did pick a specific date and time for us as commissioners to meet, that the public notice should just be given as soon as possible at that point. So I had assumed that it was and didn't realize until it was less than 48 hours that that hadn't happened. So, and yeah, just as that's our understanding and expectation in general. So given what we're, given where we are now,
It's a little late for us to have a conversation on state policy, schedule a conversation on state policy because we're headed to WAPUDA next week. Or you think, I'd be open to doing something this week, if that makes sense.
yeah, I mean, we could, if we, I mean, yeah, how do you, what do you think, Jamie, about scheduling?
Are there some bills in particular that you wanted to talk about? I know that we had talked about the WAPUDA bill briefly, and moving that forward and like how we all sort of specifically felt about that. It was some good and some bad, but is there something specific that we want to talk about statewise?
Well, I thought, as far as what would be on the table was anything that's in WAPUDA's hot list. And that's, of course, getting narrowed down. It'll be probably even more narrow after Wednesday, but and so maybe we're, after Thursday's update call, we'll know where we're at. But there was a couple I had in mind that I thought could warrant a little bit more discussion just from this identifying where we want to land from a policy standpoint. One was this bill related to creating more capacity in the Department of Commerce to help with local government assistance and support in permitting energy infrastructure projects, in planning and permitting for those. That's something WAPUDA's been opposing. And I think it also kind of gets at really a larger framework of their approach on permitting reform. And that's something that, I'm very interested in us continuing to discuss, but I think that I think we'll see what happens with that bill. I think there's the House may pass it, and then we may need to have a more serious discussion in WAPUDA about it. But the other one, I think it goes kind of in a way is connected, is the environmental justice bill, which has been watered down in been narrowed in its scope, but essentially now just requires environmental justice as a part of the SEEP application process and the initial assessments. That again, we'll see if that makes it in the next couple of days. But yeah, those are the two I had in mind.
Well, I think both of those bills are one where WAPUDA is not aggressively opposing.
They've moved it up from being like concerned to high priority oppose.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I remember seeing it in the concern category and the low priority. And which one was that, the environmental justice one or the?
I think both.
Both, okay.
Do you, Atul, do you get a update from the government relations committee for the tracking?
The 3-2-1 thing?
It comes directly from the government relations committee and it's on WAPUDA's bill tracking and what, like the shifts and like what's considered high priority.
Yeah, but I could
Do
say
we-
that I probably didn't pay attention. to the
Oh,
most recent.
because I was like, I can
'Cause I was
forward it
traveling.
to you.
Yeah, 'cause
maybe
I was
if we-
traveling.
Yeah, got it.
But, so, well, here's the thing is that, perhaps, we should put this to the front of our special meeting on Friday. So that we can take a little time to come to, a position if need be, after the Thursday morning call.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we'll start at 2:30 and then, that will push Karina back. If we need to discuss it, but we'll make a decision on Friday whether we need to cover any bills. And, if we do, we'll do that first, because that's the more urgent thing, although I would argue not more important than our,
Yeah.
but it's more urgent, so we should probably now let the beginning.
Yeah, maybe if we could block out maybe half an hour,
Yeah,
and, still probably, that would probably be suitable enough time with Karina as well.
so, does that mean that we're saying we start at 2:30? And then we end at 5, and we'll guarantee that we'll leave 2 hours for Karina, so making sure that. Her preparation is not wasted and John's preparation is not wasted. But, we'll potentially use half an hour of that meeting on Friday for state legislative action. Does that work?
I mean, it does for me. Is that fine?
That's fine. I think the one thing I would say is your special meeting notice should have a potential action if you're going to take action on any bills. You're gonna say, hey, we're going to pass a resolution, or we're gonna take formal action to support or oppose something expressly, then you need to list. And we could just say possible action on pending bills.
State bills, yeah.
State legislative bills, and just general like
Yeah,
that.
this discussion and possible action related to pending state legislative bills.
Yeah,
Support for or oppose.
doesn't even need to get that precise.
Okay.
The more specific we get, the more beholden to that specificity we are.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Chris?
Yeah, no, that works. I know why WPUDA opposes the one bill on commerce, and that's because it essentially introduces another layer in the permitting process. And
Yeah.
it will be litigated at that layer as well. So instead of 15 years, it'll be 18 years. It's that kind of reform's not helpful. More
Yeah.
regulation in an overregulated environment is not good.
Oh, I understand. I mean, I understand, and that's the perspectives that I've heard at Wakuda. I just don't agree with it. Well, I think it also just doesn't, it sort of fails to acknowledge that the intent of the bill is to, the intent of the purpose of they're not creating another regulatory layer. What they're talking about is it's identifying a need that is not being filled. And if it's not filled through additional state capacity, I could see why that may not be the best way to do it, or just the uncertainty of how it will play out. I wouldn't have 100% faith in it. But the need is there. I think that's what's most bothering me, is a failure to acknowledge that. As far as this pattern that we see where local governments don't plan with specific rules and provisions for particular types of energy infrastructure until an actual project is proposed that complies with code, goes through a process, be it local or with FSEC, and then after years in, when it gets to the closer to the finish line, is suddenly there's an uproar of public opposition, and we just saw this play out in Skagit County with proposed battery energy storage systems, and then where sure, like they're in their legal, they may be able to legally proceed and permit it through FSEC, but now there's been there's fast-tracked moratoriums and ordinances to ban anything like that from happening again. So it's things like where sometimes these concerns they may be based on they may be illegitimate, or they may be based on misinformation or misunderstanding, or the point is that local governments could use more assistance with that, it seems. And that's just one way of providing it, is to help work through the permitting process on projects that we've identified in our state energy strategy as being necessary to achieve energy independence and meet our carbon reduction goals. So I'm open to alternatives there, but I think to me, it just sounds like a knee jerk that we're saying, no more, but then we're not solving the problem at all.
I agree with that sentiment. Let me just say something though, and commissioners, forgive me because I'm taking a little bit of liberty in what I'm about to say. I do have a little bit more gray hair than both of you, and I've been here a little bit longer, and so I'm just trying to pass the benefit of some experience. This commission has repeatedly taken positions that are completely consistent with WPUDA, passed resolutions, taken action, done testimony, the whole shebang. This commission has now more recently taken positions where WPUD has been silent. Where WPUD has stayed out of it, and we've taken the lead on a position where even another PUD took in a different position, but also where WPUD was silent. I'm completely open to exploring us taking position in that contravenes WPUD if it's really well done on our part, which means if we ever are going to take a position as a commission, there's a few things I'd like us to do is to be very well prepared and to be very well considered. And the reason is because if it's not, it will hurt our credibility as an organization. But if it's really grounded, in what our community needs and wants, and if it's thoroughly researched and put forward, then I'm comfortable sticking my head out as an individual and also as a team. But we just need to make sure we do that. And obviously I'd love it if we're able to do that unanimously, because when we do it unanimously, it's easier to have some courage. So I just want to see that, and I'm not talking about this particular issue, I'm talking about any issue, whether it's on water, whether it's on broadband, whether it's on energy, I'm absolutely willing to stand with a tough position. We just have to be ready to do that.
And I'm more likely to take an opposition position to things when it directly impacts Whatcom County or this PUD. And a lot of times these bills don't because of the people
Well,
we serve.
but this could.
Yeah. I'm just
And
saying,
storage and, yeah.
I mean, thankfully, Whatcom County is ahead of the, is just ahead of the game, in that, you know, we have docketed ordinances, that
storage.
coming through to update code for geothermal, energy storage, hydrogen, ground mounted solar, we're doing that.
Yeah.
So most counties I'm finding are not, and because they have this mentality that, the less rules, the better, the less regulation, the better, and it's actually backwards, because, I mean, the opposition here are not, rules that require, proponents and permitters to think through the consequences. That's what SEPA is, that's what these environmental rules are, they're really a framework for considering what's the consequence and impact of the project before it happens. The barrier is NIMBYism. And if it's not through SEPA, it can be through the very strong powers that local governments have through zoning and setting permitting and development guidelines and rules to restrict development. So it can do it one way or the other. And as far as this idea of remove the barrier, I just don't see how we're going to remove the barrier of the constitutionally vested property rights and rights of counties and cities and municipalities to decide what gets built places, fundamentally. So, how are we going to do it then? Better planning, setting more specific rules, having the community come to a real political consensus
Better
about.
upfront planning.
Yeah, but the community needs to come to a consensus about where's the appropriate place to put certain things and what should not be allowed there in advance of, projects that we can anticipate being proposed. That's my opinion. So,
well, let's talk about it more on Friday.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess all I would be looking for is maybe to just have more of a conversation about it in the next WPUD meeting without necessarily us having to assert a firm position on it
Yeah, okay.
this late in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. All right, well, thanks, Commissioner, for that discussion. Let's move on to the operations report.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hi, Kurt.
I just have a quick thing. I told you last meeting about we're declaring an emergency for our 115K transmission line. Nothing really has changed in that, except that on April 1st, we're going to have a contractor actually get up there on the switch and look at, touch and look at the equipment up there. And then we'll be able to make decisions from that report and move on from there. But I just want to let you guys know where we're at with that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, you could really shock Chris with an April Fool's joke that day.
Oh yeah, there's Well, actually, we have a lot of activities occurring on that day, so I'm not gonna,
No
tempt the world.
I've
Sorry,
had some
Kurt.
doozies over the years. I don't need another one.
Great, thanks, commissioners.
Questions? Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
No, okay, well, let's move on and then, let's try to get through old business pretty quickly. So, broadband first. Thank you, Kurt. Bye, Brian.
So, I think that the big news on broadband is that the NOFO for phase 2 for BEAD is going to drop. It's supposed to drop yesterday, and it's now been pushed out at least a week. So we're not going to find out. And until the NOFO for round 2 drops, we don't know what areas got awarded in round 1. So at this point, I would say we're just nowhere on broadband, nowhere different from what you'd heard in the past, and we're holding. So,
And
Andrew,
the port has been contacted on the applications.
what's that?
Have we gotten any word via the port on our applications?
I'll ask Andrew to speak to that. I don't think that we really have. They asked us some questions about how we could reduce costs on these. And, you know, when you've got a fiber build and they want it to be half the price, the answer is you just can't. So I think we're not going to really find out until we've got the NOFO for phase 2. And then we'll know what areas have already been awarded. Andrew, are you there in the room?
Yeah.
I'm here, yes, that's true. Their high cost threshold that we talked a little bit about is they're trying to get all the applicants to come under the 7,000 threshold, per BSL, I mean. And I can tell you that all of our applications were well over that threshold. With the exception of Point Roberts. So I'm still feeling confident that we perhaps might be awarded on one project, but overall, the rest I can see getting kicked to round 2.
Okay, anything else on broadband for now? Let's move on to education.
Special hearing on this Thursday morning to review the standing steering committee's case, proposed special rules for motions, to present those to the court. We don't expect the court to adopt those that day, but to give feedback, and then there'll be a proposed stay on filing of motions and other actions other than the filing of claims. The committee, that's coming from the committee, we felt that with the service and the actions occurring starting next week, that could immediately have motions being filed and, you know, then Katie bar the doors for lawyers, and we wanted to prevent that for 3 months. So the proposed stay will go to June 30th and just try to work out these initial rules with the court. And then, so that's the proposal. So that's Thursday morning. There'll be a Zoom link if you're interested in watching, and that's all I have right now.
Well, what about the bill? What's the status of the bill?
Last I heard last week from Bill Clark was that it's through the House basically unanimously and starting through the Senate committee meetings.
Okay. Well, that'll affect the stay too.
It does not have any bearing on the stay. The bill would allow parties who believe they have a pre-water code, meaning 1945 for the surface or groundwater code 1917 for the surface water, to when they file their claims, they can claim a pre-water code water right. That opportunity to file those type of claims closed a number of years ago, but there's belief that some farmers, some cities have
Some residents.
who have a claim to a pre-water code water right.
I do.
They need to file a claim for that. And if they had not filed it when those claim periods were open, they cannot assert that in the adjudication. So this is just going to give another opportunity for those folks to come forward, should the bill pass.
I try to stay off the internet, off of the social medias, but I was scrolling this weekend, and it seems that more people are now aware of adjudication and they're panicking. You know,
All she did send a letter out,
Okay.
another card out,
Yeah.
and
that maybe that's why.
and said it's coming, and it's gonna, all she told me,
Those are very friendly.
We're here for the government, here to help you take away your.
Yeah.
We're here for Yeah, okay, that's why then, that they said.
So, and the
Yeah,
mailing.
very friendly tone.
The mailing's gonna come on Monday and we expect it's registered mail, so we expect by the 19th people start receiving it. Big pack.
Oh, oh,
Court said it had to be single sided, not double sided, because it didn't trigger the court systems.
oh, for real, okay, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
Commissioners, if I may, real quick to your point, my wife and I are actually closing on a house in Wayne, next
Welcome.
week or so, yes, it just fell into place. Anyway, to the adjudication, our realtor expressed to us that realtors across the county are trying to avoid having to deal with or sell property that have wells on them right now, because it is going to get very complicated for them when the adjudication starts. So it's having some impact and some notice amongst the realtors in the area.
Okay, anything else on adjudication?
not for me.
Okay, moving on, I'm just trying to keep it going, geothermal?
Yeah, I don't have anything new to report on that. I think you guys got the report 2 meetings ago, and we're just waiting now on the final report from Hero. And Andrew, do you have anything to add on that? Oh, Andrew, you've checked with BLM on the leases, haven't you, since we last talked?
I have, but there's nothing new to report. There's
Oh.
no forward motion.
I have a question though, where can I find the results of our pre-feasibility study on our website?
It's not up yet?
No, I was looking for it. I told somebody, oh, you're gonna love this. You gotta see this. It's great, and I can't find it. And I don't know if it's buried in the minutes or, you know. I don't-
I'm not sure. I'll work with Joseph and we'll get it separated out,
Okay,
Mhm.
and then we'll
Maybe
let you
put
know
it-
where it is.
You want a press release, a link in the press release so that we can find it.
Okay. It will be done, it will be done.
thank
Okay.
you.
And then, oh, did it come up, by the way, geothermal in your trip to DC?
Yeah, both senators were, especially Senator Cantwell, were really supportive of it. They mentioned it. They're more focused on the Mount St. Helens Wind River area. And that's because they're hearing more from Chelan and Douglas and those folks. But they had heard about through their staff, because especially Andrew has been pushing it with their staff. They knew about what's going on in Mount Baker, and they were really happy about it. So generally supportive. I'm not sure what they could do about it.
Okay, and then, strategic plan update.
Well,
So we've got-
sorry, go ahead. Jumping ahead.
John, did you have something on the geothermal?
Nope.
So on the strategic plan, we've got a contract with with Moelingi now, and we've got oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. That's why I'm not there in person. We've got so I'm signing the work order with them today. Pardon me.
Bless you.
Yeah, let's see.
I'm signing the work order with them today, and then we'll be scheduling the kickoff meetings and getting everything going. And we've got a 6-month window, and once we go, we should get this thing wrapped up relatively quickly. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's great.
Okay, well, that concludes old business, right? And so let's move on to new business.
Yeah, just acknowledging that we're running short on time with the OPMA PR training. So what's set aside, I mean, I would suggest maybe we should try to cover everything else first and then come back to it.
What do you think of that, John?
I was gonna suggest, if not knowing what's on your agenda for the next meeting, we just push that off to the next meeting. I have to have 10 minutes in the executive session.
Oh,
Okay.
And, so that leaves us 20 minutes. 25 minutes for all the other items. I don't think we can. 20 minutes for the OPMA, I can speak fast, and if there's no questions, I can get through it, but
we always have questions.
yeah, so.
It could wait until the next
If
meeting.
you don't have a large agenda, the next time we can.
There was a great OPMA session, by the way, but you need to do your thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But just letting you know that we are refreshing and climbing the curve over here.
Yeah, we
We're
did.
doing our part, okay, just so you know.
Not me, I keep you in business.
Yeah, we'll put orientations. Like,
Oh, you had that?
Yeah, pretty extensive multi-hour trainings from, there were some folks came from like the state attorney general's office for PRA and OMA, so.
If you've had that, Eddie, and you've had that at school in the last 2 months,
They do it at the new commissioner.
and now you've had, I mean, well,
Yeah.
you went to that, then technically, you've met your requirements, so we can.
No, it doesn't hurt.
But it's good for
It's
the
good
staff
stuff.
and everybody to
Yeah.
have the in-house
Yeah.
reminder.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it for next meeting's agenda, hold this down to the
Okay,
next
so
packet.
we're doing it, we're moving 9A to the next meeting.
Okay, motion to table.
Yeah.
There's a motion to table.
I move we table the annual OPMIA PRA training until our next meeting.
I second the motion.
There's a motion, a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 9B,
This one is, I believe, Kurt. It's the consort work order.
Oh, yep. Hello again, commissioners. So this is for, I'm requesting your approval for amendment 3 to work order number 2. This is for, the consort engineers to do, engineering for the whole plant, for the whole campus of, plant 1. This will take us for the whole facility all the way out through the bid period services. So that, this is a 18 months kind of a thing, but this is to get us all the way to bid for this work order. There's a lot of information in here, and I know we're tight on time, but if there's any questions or you want me to fill in any gaps, I'd be more than happy to.
Well, it's a very specific number. So assuming that it's, the line items have been well reviewed.
Yes, and these are all, they send us, Consor sends us also their sub consultant, what the sub consultings are sending to Consor, and we're looking through all that information as well. Really one of the tough parts of this whole project is the ground improvements. That's really where a lot of the work and a lot of the cost is coming from, because are close to the river. We're tying a new UAB, the utilidor building, to the existing intake facility. So there's a lot of groundwork, which is really took us a little while to get to this point. But yes, we have looked at all the sub-consultants proposals to Consor, and then how Consor put it together. And that's where they came up with that very specific number, down to the exact number they have there.
And I guess I don't have experience to know how typical this is for contracts of this size. It does, I mean, it's certainly a significant fee.
Yeah,
This,
makes you sweat, doesn't it?
This one thing I would say is this is about based on our last potential cost assessment that they given us for the entire plant. This would be about 6 or 7% of the engineering cost for the overall facility. And typically, if you're 10% or under, you're in the right ballpark of what your engineering should cost for the overall, for any project. If you're less than 10% of engineering for the overall project, you're in the right neighborhood. And this is about 6 or 7%.
So this is 6 or 7% of the total expected project cost.
Correct.
So at least, so the total project cost is about for this first phase is about 50-60 million. Is that right?
Well, we're not breaking it into phases. It's there will be a construction sequencing, but that's not going to be really built in phases. It's going to be one contractor doing the whole.
So at the end of this, I'm looking at the tasks, and the tasks roughly align with I like the list of tasks better as an understanding of deliverables and the section defined as deliverables in this document. Because, for me, it captures one thing that I assume is one of the key deliverables, which is a detailed design. Is that correct?
Right,
Will-
and that's task 3.
And that design will be many pages of big schematics and drawings and.
I think it was, the number was either 397 pages or 497 pages. But yeah, that's correct.
There's gonna be a lot of pages on big sheets of paper or equivalently on a screen. Do we have screen, have we bought monitors big enough to look at these things, by the way?
Mouse and Zoom typically.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, there's gonna be a lot of detail in these drawings.
Right, and every major, there's a 60%, 90%, 100%. We have typically a couple weeks that we review here in-house to make sure that we have the right valves, and a lot of it is our Devin and Paul and John, they were part of the Plant 2 rebuild. And so it was a smaller project, but they've been through a lot of this before. And so they know things that the troubles that they encountered in the Plant 2 rebuild and what kind of challenges were there. And so they have a really good understanding of how the process and the flow of the plant should work.
So if we were to look at a Gantt chart, this would be obviously early in the Gantt chart, and then, at the end of the project is how many years from when the final design is completed?
We're looking at about a 3 to 4 year build. So
Yeah.
we're looking at out to 2028, 2029 for this.
And so we're not gonna, will there be any concurrency of building, while final design is occurring? I guess we're doing the Utilidor project, but is there any other aspects of construction that will begin before final design is completed? Is there any overlap?
No, I mean, we're not going to begin construction until we have final design, if that's
Yeah.
your question.
Yeah, and also I should share, it might be helpful for, if we're in a subsequent meeting, at, whether it's a special meeting, I'll leave that up to you guys, or whether it's, part of a regular meeting, to go over the project timeline at a high level. Just so the commission is aware of, how the project flow.
I can
Kind of-
present a schedule to you in an operations report if that's something that.
Yeah, just a project management overview. I don't want this to be an onerous request at all, but just like to begin the process of providing oversight that the commission has over just how the project is proceeding and unraveling or, being built out. So, as timing up to you, how to handle that, so.
Okay,
But it's certainly something that I think would be helpful for us to get a big overview of the project. And also to say, I'm sure we all know this, but the final design will not be the final design.
well,
It'll be
that's
a
what as-built.
Yeah, it'll be a document, and things will change. But then what will happen is that final design document will be updated, so it'll be a
Right.
working document. Hey, this is the best you can, what you think everything's gonna look like, and then you'll find out, well, this part's no longer available. Or, the vendors recommended that we go with this part instead of this part because it's a higher performing part, I'm just giving simplistic examples, but the final design will not be the final design when the budget is done. So, just clarifying. I have no issue with this. Nora,
I guess I will make a motion to approve amendment 3 to work order number 2 with Consor for additional engineering services for a cost not to exceed $4,492,953. Very specific.
no sense, no
And
sense.
authorize the district's general manager to execute the amendments.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then moving on to 9C.
Great, thanks,
Um,
Commissioners.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kurt.
That's a big one. Resolution number 873, updating the target balance and signatories on the Key Bank revolving checking account.
And this
Thank
is
you.
Annette's.
Good morning, Commissioners. With the abandonment of Mr. Walters coming up real soon, we're changing some signers, and that includes both our revolving checking account and also the county. I'm expecting next commission meeting will have a very similar resolution that will address the county signers, but for now, this is just on the revolver. So there's two main things that I need to change. One is we've set it up so that the signers are by position. And so normally that would just mean Kurt would slide in when Brian leaves. But we also, because of travel and vacations, the revolving checks require 2 signatures. So we would like to add Andrew, so the Director of Broadband and New Power Supply, as a signer on the revolver. And we would also ask that we increase the balance. What it has been is it was set as a $10,000 target balance. And what that enables us to do is to cut checks when we need them in a quick turnaround, as opposed to waiting for the county. And with this new project coming up and with costs increasing, we would like to bump that up to 25,000. So adding a new signer and then also bumping up the balance is the bottom line of what we're asking for in this.
I'm not.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, the actual amount, how has it evolved over time? I mean, is this, when's the last time we changed this amount?
It's been at 10,000 since I've started. So, I think they probably, from what I've seen, it probably was initiated at 10,000, so it hasn't been changed over time. And we try not to use this. We try and run it through the county, but especially when you're doing building, there's permits that come up that need to get paid within, not wait 3 weeks, and other expenses. So that's kind of what we use this for.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. Just a question though. So Chris, you, Annette, Andrew, and Kurt are all signers, is that right? Okay.
Well, with this, currently it's Brian. So I do have some paperwork for Key Bank I'll have to fill out to send back in, but to get the commission approval, and then I'll send that paperwork in. So we'll remove Brian and add the other 2.
I'm amazed we can live with such a small
Yeah,
thing. I had half a million from all of it.
yeah. I don't have a problem with it, so I'm going to make the motion to approve resolution 873, updating the target balance and signatories on the Key Bank revolving checking account.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Annette.
Okay, well,
Commissioners, we're at about 5 to 10 right now. So I don't know if you want to just quick run through your reports and then we go into executive session and
yep, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
I have no report. That's quick. Said my piece.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is last week I attended PPC and next week I'm going to PUD. I did want to check in with you, Eddie, and we can do this offline too, but because we can talk about attending meetings offline. But are you planning on coming back early? And
Yeah, just, so I do plan to be there, for the full day in person for the orientation on Wednesday, the 19th. For the Thursday committee meetings, just due to some other, like, I've somehow had multiple scheduling conflicts tearing in between responsibilities to choose from here. So I might not attend the legislative reception in the evening, and I think I really should be fully decided by now as far as whether I'd stay in person on Thursday or attend them virtually. But I think I'm leaning towards staying there in person.
Yeah, I mean, I can be there, I'll be there. So I've adjusted my plan to go down there Wednesday, so I'll miss Wednesday's Commissioner Education, which is not essential for me to attend. I'll arrive Wednesday evening, and I'll stay all day Thursday, and then I'll come back Friday.
Okay,
That way I'll cover for, so you have a leisure, you can decide what works for you, if you need to leave and cover Energy Committee remotely or by Zoom or whatever, that's fine with me too, so.
okay, yeah, I do plan to definitely make all the meetings, either at least remotely, but if not in person.
Yeah, if you need
Are
me.
you planning to attend virtually?
I'm,
or-
I'm planning to attend virtually, but I will let you know if something comes up
Okay,
and I have to
yeah.
miss a meeting. If
Or
you
even
can,
partial- or even a
yeah.
portion of, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I'll let you know. If you can't attend that legislative reception,
Yeah,
it's
I'll-
super cool.
Yeah, we did enjoy one, we did with Energy Northwest when I was there in January. So yeah, would certainly like to be there. So, yeah, just as far as timing,
It's a good opportunity to meet some of our folks down there.
totally, yeah.
Get your picture taken for the house.
Well, I'll make sure to RSVP with Fukuda to be sure, what, but yeah, but yeah, I can confirm that, outside of this meeting, so. In my report, was that all you wanted to?
That's your main concern.
There was actually, yeah, one, new business matter I wanted to raise with the commission and just flag. So on Thursday this week, the Whatcom County Planning Commission is going to be reviewing draft land use ordinance to amend county code to allow 230 kilovolt transmission power lines.
Okay,
And that was at request of Puget Sound Energy, and to my knowledge, Whatcom PUD hasn't, is there any communication with the county about this?
Yes. yeah, I
Yes.
spoke with, Councilmember Kaylee Galloway. Chris and I reviewed it,
Okay,
2 months ago.
okay. Yeah.
Was that right? About 2 months, 3 maybe even 3 months ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but I think one of the things that we suggested that was kind of take the limit off. Because if it ended up that somebody needed to build a 500 kV line, do you need to go back and redo the planning? And specifically, when you look at our geothermal plant, if it's a home run, you're going to have 500 kV lines coming south out of it out in Whatcom County. It won't just be 230.
Yeah.
So
And so was that recommendation made at the time when the county council docketed the matter? Was it, did you communicate that
we did. It was to staff.
to
Yeah,
staff and to at least one council member, but
Yes.
not in public?
yeah, Commissioner Galloway, yeah.
So in my experience here, there's, I think this is important to follow, while like most importantly would be making, our views known to the county council when they make the final decision on it. It's always a little bit of an unknown what's gonna happen in the planning commission review process and what, so I think Thursday is when we're gonna hear,
Is
are
there-
there members of the public who are opposing this? And
Is there a hearing Thursday or?
it's a work session, so I believe, yeah, it includes public comment.
So yeah, the question is, will we be able to make public comment and should I, would it be appropriate, commission support, one of us in making a public comment at that meeting?
Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, I support it, you
Well-
know. The old one was, the current regulation is that, so, what is it? Chris, is it 110 only?
115, yeah.
15, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, it's unusual, no other county in the state has that, 115, so, it just seemed weird that it was 115, and so raising it to 30 is a good thing, and saying that, we support raising it, to take the limit off would be okay too, but,
Well, I guess that's a matter of assigning who's gonna speak on behalf of the PUD.
I don't care.
Are
I can
you
do it.
interested in doing that?
Sure. I'll do it. Is it okay with everybody? Yeah, I mean, they know who I am.
Yeah, they know you well, right?
Yeah, they know I am, yeah.
Well, I would support that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great.
I think we're on agreement then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
okay. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, and so I guess it's unknown if
Yeah, make it longer.
there'll be more than one meeting on it, but, yeah, it's a good opportunity for us, so, there was, I don't know, I feel like there's a couple other things I wanted to raise, but for sake of time, yeah, I guess we can proceed.
I did have one other thing I want to bring up. I just remembered this. There's a hydrogen conference. I sent the email to Chris coming up in April, I think, in Seattle. And because it's close, I'd like to go. Do you remember me sending you that, Chris? A long time ago. A month or so ago.
Vaguely. Yeah, I remember this was one of those ones like a Marcus Evans conference.
Yeah, I can bring it up again at the next meeting. There's plenty of time still. And I'd like to per diem it. So, and get reimbursed for the cost of going. Yeah, that's it. I'll bring it up again though.
Okay, great.
There was one other thing, so there's a process of, deconstruction demolition underway, at the, Intalco aluminum smelter site. So, I believe it was yesterday, it was a SEPA comment deadline on mitigated determination of non-significance. Just one step in, what's a pretty lengthy process, and will be ongoing for many years. But I did look at the SEPA documents and the evaluation of that. And one thing that stood out to me is concerned the substation being demolished. And, yeah, something I might just like to talk more with the general manager about perhaps, but flagging for others, like, is especially in the context of, what you were raising with just like, reliability and supply chain for, breakers, transformers, other kind of equipment in the energy space. Is there any concern that with going that route of full demolition of that site?
So
Yeah.
just a real brief. This is something you don't need to worry about. The low voltage side is what they're talking about, and it's junk. The high voltage side is owned by Bonneville. It's not being demolished.
Okay, it's just the low voltage side.
Yeah.
I just want to say something about that since it came up but I won't take much time. I'll just say that there's some confusion about who owns the whole high voltage. There's different people who are, Intalco thinks they own some of the high voltage, infrastructure. And, Petrogas, Gas think they own it too, and then BP, is probably rightfully is the owner of it, but I just want to say that there's some claims being made on ownership of that infrastructure, by different parties. I've heard.
Well,
Is it
that may
true?
be true, but it's not subject to demolition. So that's not germane in this discussion.
Yeah, okay.
We only have 13 minutes left for
Yeah,
this
that's
meeting
the
to
rule,
close
yeah,
down
yeah,
executive session.
Gotta have the executive
Yeah.
session.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a public comment period. Does anybody in the room or online have anything to add at the end of the meeting? And before we go into executive session? No hands raised? Okay, and so as we prepare for executive session, I just clarify that there's no action to be taken. And this relates to potential litigation. And we expect to take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Or should we say, can you tolerate 20 minutes?
I have to be done by 10:30 at the absolute latest.
So we'll say 20 minutes, so we'll start it in a
No, let's
minute.
say 10 minutes and then we can stand it.
Okay, great.
I'll turn into a pumpkin.
Really quickly, is Chris gonna get on to the
Yeah,
Zoom or is he gonna come into the room?
I've opened up the Zoom.
All right, great.
And you're staying in this, Brian?
Yes. It'll be here too.
Well, good morning.
So this, we'll just go right to it. This is, matter we discussed.
We need to have a debrief on that. Okay, so we just came out of executive session. There was no action taken. And if there's nothing else for the good of the
You
order,
can ask me that now.
okay,
Yeah, it'll just take a
Yeah.
minute, yeah.
go ahead.
Just concerning, the legal, our contract legal services on adjudication.
Yeah.
And as far as, can you tell us a little bit more what we got for that figure?
We need a feedback session on that.
So we are gonna try to find the time to bring, Sarah Mack and Matt Wells back up. This time covers largely this from my
Let's do it by
time.
Zoom. Let's not bring him back up. Let's not pay for the trouble.
That's fine. I know Commissioner Erie hasn't met them if he wants to, that'd be the circumstance, but
Okay,
we are spending time, right now getting all the historical records built for all the evidence. So for example, we're having Rebecca and Joseph pull together, all of the back data of the daily records of water use, which was on a big paper wheel, hand by hand. We're collecting all that to go back as far as time we can. We have them searching for all the old water system plans. Sarah Mack is coordinating some of that, and then the discussions are, and she did make a trip up here once, to, go through.
you can leave it open.
Go through that in person to see the records, understand what we're doing, give them
Thank you,
direction,
Joseph.
and then we're addressing how to, present those in evidence when we have. We want to get all of our evidence collected as best we can now, even though the evidence filing won't be for 3.5 years. We filed a claim, so we want to know what our claim is, it's supported by the evidence. So from their work, that's been primarily their work in collecting that, and their paralegal work in working on some of that. We have, Matt Wells is gonna be the chief litigator, so, he was out of town, but he's had someone else attend some of the court hearings, sometimes by Zoom. For instance, she's gonna sit in by Zoom on this Thursday. I can't be there this Thursday. I attend the case standing committee meetings, which are every week, right now, while we're trying to develop these rules. In the past, it's been more intensive on my side when we were working with the Lummies on a number of different topics, but, that's kind of been focused on this case steering committee. We haven't had any of the work from Holland and Hart done for a year now, and we're having the work being done, by some consultants on some science issues we discussed in executive session if you want to. But that's the sum of what's going on right now, preparing the evidence in the background and cataloging everything and getting it organized and how, so we understand it.
So just to summarize, maybe we, as a commission, we should say, when do we want that report out? And conversation
Yeah,
about it.
To me, I would say it's probably best when we have a sense of when Steve, and we have Steve Joe assisting in some of this, given his history, and he gets billed through my firm, so we pay him, don't add any fees to him, but he gets paid through my firm.
Steve would be a good person to provide the report.
Yeah, but we're not gonna be at trial for 4 years, not or more than 4 years,
That's-
it'll be 20 years
yeah,
from now, who
yeah,
knows
yeah.
who's around. So when Sarah and Rebecca and Joseph feel they've collected a lot of the background, the evidence, we can come back and maybe show you. We've talked about, of the 8 or 9 water rights, giving you one sample of what everything is, the detail on that, so we can walk you through that. I think they're close to that, so if you want to do something in April or May, we can just target that.
Let's say May. By the end of May.
Okay.
Target something.
Giving a little bit of a deadline or two.
Yeah, and if they don't feel that's comfortable, we'll communicate it back and say.
Okay.
And John, if I may, so that I'm helping Rebecca, one of the things that we've been talking about, because they've been asking me to find the record stuff, is quite literally, we don't know, because the filing hasn't been fully done yet, we don't know what they want. We don't know what the target is per se yet, so we're trying to find anything and everything we can records wise that shows any usage, any water right background information, any of that. So that when we do know what the actual target is, we can narrow focus and process the hard evidence we have.
Let's be precise, is that we know what our target is in the sense of collecting all the information and data that supports the water usage.
Right.
We don't know where that lies, and we don't know what all the records are. The records were not necessarily kept with everything through the 60s and 70s and 80s. We are can we collect the invoices that went to the refineries to show the water data? You know, we haven't gone to that step yet, but we could. We don't have all those invoices. We would have to go to the state archive, maybe they have it. We said, well, let's reach out to BP or Conoco and see what records they have from our invoicing that showed water data they got, that they were charged for. So we're trying to build up all that record because our water, we have to show continuity of use and consumption over time to avoid, to maintain our show our active compliance with usage.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that is helpful.
I think that it was one of the questions that I asked when we were choosing a temporary commissioner was like, what do you think the role of the PUD is in adjudication? And not a single person said that we were litigants. And I think a lot of people miss that. A lot of just the public misses that too, that we have a claim to prove. Like, we're not just working on policy surrounding adjudication, like we are proving a very large
The
claim.
largest.
Yes.
We have-
river.
We have multiple claims.
Yes, and so it's very time consuming, and I'm really grateful for the help that the good help that we have to do that.
And we
I
put
just
a
wanna
target,
make
we
sure
put a target, at the end of this year to have all of our information and data collected to be prepared to file a claim December 31st, even though it's not due until May. So 2 or 3 reasons. One, I'm still here and haven't unplugged my keyboard yet, which I do at the end of this year, so that we can complete that. I'll be monitoring it and working. If anything comes up through May, I'm still available. I have a tethered keyboard for this purpose until we get the claims filed. So that was kind of the goal. We're trying to push everybody to get that done this year.
We just had a little conversation on adjudication since we had.
General high level on what summary of what the legal bills are for.
I thought I was missing open session here and it was like.
It was, and we're still in, open-
We're still in a public meeting.
Yeah.
We're about to wrap.
So, it's, okay, so it's 10:23 approximately, there's no further, items for the good of the order, thank you all, let's adjourn the meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
I mean, that's, I can.
You can just do it.